Hello witches, and welcome back to Activist Witch, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and in today's video we are going to discuss the aesthetic of witchcraft, witchcore, and we're going to use as an example the music video Everybody Scream by Florence and the Machine, which was just released. But before we get started, let me remind you that I've opened a Ko-fi. And on there you can do a monthly recurring donation, a one-off donation, or even get a tarot reading with me Italian style. The low-income option starts at £5. And for the foreseeable future, part of my profits from tarot reading go directly to support Coaches to Gaza, who support Palestinian refugees in Cairo, and the Good Law Project, who's trying to bring trans rights back to the UK, because trans rights are human rights. Also, if you're around Bristol or the southwest of England, on the 1st of September, I'm going to be at the Haunted Bookshop in Bristol to discuss the project Witches for Palestine, what we have done so far, and the next step, which is the Rage Circle that Kellyanne Maddox, myself, and Imogen from Sapling Tarot will host on the 6th of September. For more information about how to join, click down in the description below.
This is the area they said was safe, south of Gaza. It's the safe area. I've been displaced from one place to another, from the north to the central Gaza Strip, and then here. We're tired. We're tired.
The first important premise is to explain that I am not going, and I don't mean to drag Florence. I know that a lot of her aesthetic in the last good few years has been focused on witchiness and witchcraft. I found an article that talks about the fact that she funded a witches' coven when she was 15. I have a very soft spot personally for Florence because in my previous life, when I was working in music, I photographed her on her first public event. So I feel close and I've appreciated her career for the last 16, 17 years. I watched the video, which just was pushed to me from YouTube, which makes sense. It has 500,000 views in a day, makes complete sense. And I saw some witches post about it, saying, this is the most witchy thing I've ever seen. Good. And I'm not going to say that just ironically, because here's the first important distinction that I'm going to make. What Florence has been doing in the last few years is give a lot of visibility to witchiness, witchcore, witchy stuff. Visibility is not representation. It's better than nothing, and I agree on that. Something is better than nothing. But as a person that comes from multiple marginalizations, believe me, I will eat up the crumbs that the system gives me, but I still need to be able to see that those are crumbs and not something valid enough to say, that's okay, that's as much as I need, because that's quite literally what the capitalist system wants us to do and hope that we do, by feeding us media that gives us the impression that it's progressive, it's diverse, when in the end, the point remains that if that is just visibility, it doesn't actually do anything to change the current situation of the system and of the world. And that is what capitalism counts on. It counts on the fact that because we see it through media, which includes music videos, we get pacified by, see, we're there. Isn't this equality? No, it's not. So the issue with visibility versus representation is basically the issue with tokenism.
Visibility is the speaking slot at the sponsored recruiting event. Representation is the invited talk at the industry event based on actual expertise. Visibility is the pride flag on the Twitter profile. Representation is in the people who actually work there and the policies that actually support them. At the core of it, visibility is some form of currency that occasionally exchanges for some goodwill, but rarely anything more. Representation is a form of recognition.
You can be visible and stand there, or you can be representation of your category and make people learn and inform people about your actual lived experience. partially because of the nature of a music video. I understand that you cannot expect much representation, but we definitely deserved better than the kind of visibility and calling extras witches just because they have spasms that is part of this video. So this is not, again, a call out against Florence herself or against Autumn the Wild, who is a disabled artist, who is the director of this video. Absolutely not. What I'm saying, and what I'm trying to say to the people that watch the video, so you have watched the music video of Florence, and you think that's amazing representation. It's not. And I'm not saying that to take a dump on Florence. I'm saying that to you so you understand this trick that capitalism tried to play on us. Oh, you've seen yourself represented, just visible, but represented in this music video. You're equal, you're out there, your fight is done, you don't need to do anything else. That's how capitalism pacifies us. And it's, in my perception, slightly unfortunate that it was done in this video because, again, I have a soft spot, I like Florence, I do like the aesthetic. But here's the difference between aesthetic and substance, and we discussed it before in Capitalism and Cottagecore. I think the best metaphor that I can give you between aesthetic and culture and subculture and marginalized culture is the idea of eating an orange versus having orange flavoring to put in water. The aesthetic is the flavoring. It has the taste, it has the smell, but it's all on the surface. There is no nutritional value, there is no vitamins, no macro, no micronutrients, there's not. There's the feeling of it, but there's nothing else. You scratch the surface, there's nothing else. You drank water, there's no nutrients that went into your body. You have an orange, which is funny as a metaphor because I don't actually eat oranges, but you have oranges, and there's an entire system in that. You can use the peel as a witch to put on your heater, not only as a witch actually, and it makes your house smell nice during autumn. You can eat the segments of the orange and you have fiber with it, along with the micronutrients, along with the flavor of orange, along with fructose. All those things are there. Despite sharing the name and the concept of orange flavor, they are not the same thing. And the flavoring gives you the idea, but there's nothing else. There's no vitamin C, which is the main vitamin that you get from oranges. There's no vitamin C in your flavoring. There's no substance to it. And it is an issue when we align more and more with aesthetic rather than the culture that that aesthetic has been taken from, because we empty it. Simple as that. We acquire all those signifiers that come from that culture visually, and we make those the center point. And once you do it once, twice, 3 times, those are the signifiers that you now think are connected to witch, witches, witchcraft, witchy things, witchcore. And it completely forgets where it comes from. And I've talked about it on my channel before, but it's always worth reminding because I seem to be one of the few people that, if not just know, at least reminds people of this. The word witch is political, historically. It carries a meaning, historically. You can be a magician, you can be an esotericist, you can be an occultist. The Nazis were into magic. And you can be all of that and practice magic and do spells. But if you call yourself a witch, it's because that word has meaning historically. The word witch was used against marginalized people to function as a sentence. That's what the witch trials were. Somebody was accused of being a witch, of doing witchcraft. They were more likely than not going to be executed. And most of these people were not even practicing any kind of magic. It was just the word used against them to other them and to them execute them. I've mentioned it before, Caliban and the Witch by Silvia Federici is an amazing book if you want the historical recount of that and how the word witch was used against people, and mainly women, to take property from them. If you were a widow and you had property, you were too independent, therefore you're a witch so that I can take your property. If you are a woman and I'm a man and I have decided that I want you but you tell me no, I will say that you're a witch, you bewitched me, and I get you killed. These are the historical recounts of the things that have happened. The word witch acts as a behavioral threat. That's where it comes from. That's why reclaiming it has been so important. We have reclaimed it from the second wave feminism movement exactly because the witch was the woman that would not bend to the requests and demands of the system, of the patriarchal, capitalist, white supremacist system that we are in. So it is not only something fancy, something cute, something whimsy, it's first and foremost a responsibility. If you call yourself a witch, you need to know where that word comes from. And you need to know the legacy that then rests on your shoulders, which is not the legacy of having a practice, doing a spell. You can be a magician and do that, but if you are a witch, you stand strong against the system because people have died when they were given that name. For you to embrace it now, you need to honor the people that come before you, and that name was used against them. There's also a distinction that I want to make in case you think that, oh, isn't aesthetics just the development of what we used to call subcultures, and so aren't witches the equivalent of what goths were in the 80s? No.
Both subcultures and aesthetics have a shared list of elements, including a common fashion sense, media, and visual motifs. However, subcultures are noticeably different from the norm. You're able to pick out and identify a person from a subculture as being different from an average person. Aesthetics, by contrast, don't really have to be different from the norm. Subcultures tend to meet in person, have closer social ties, make zines, have memes, inside jokes, and more. In this regard, subcultures emphasize social connections when compared to internet aesthetics. On the other hand, one can participate in an aesthetic by just making mood boards, curating playlists, and posting fan-made edits and pictures. Aesthetics don't require group interaction and don't facilitate making friends as much. Simply put, the social component for subcultures is mandatory, while for aesthetics it's optional. In contrast, you have to actively participate in a subculture to be a part of it. Subcultures will almost always have a greater longevity because the community has a tighter knit and it becomes part of your identity. On the other hand, internet aesthetics are ephemeral.
So I wouldn't be surprised if aesthetics actually were offshoots of all these subcultures, but they are offshoots in the context of late-stage capitalism, where capitalism, to sell us something, it will sell us anything. It will sell us criticism of itself as long as it can make a penny out of us. And so what capitalism does very well is scratch the surface, get just what on the surface level appeals to people related to any kind of subject, including witchcraft, and sells us that. I've recently made a video about the tools that capitalism sells to us. I've also recently made a video about why embracing the word witch is historically political, and you need to be aware of that. So I'll link those down in the description below. But back to Florence, what is my issue with this video? And I said it before, probably a music video that needs to be a short film in 5 minutes is not the best place to hope for representation, as much as there are some music videos that are quite literally short films with scripts and with people talking as well, so there's a lot that can be done there. But let's be generous and do consider the kind of medium that a music video is. Is that the best kind of visibility that we could have hoped for from someone like Florence? It's visibility. It's better than nothing. I will go on record say that. But does that mean that the job is done? You know, the problem is that I'm thinking of something that was shown to me yesterday. I don't want to compare racism to fundamentally the misogyny that is behind witchcraft, because that's what it is. I don't think it's anti-pagan sentiment as much as it's ridiculing for the paganism, or you believe those things. Again, we are in the age of enlightenment. But I think it's genuinely misogyny, the kind of anti-sentiment that there is against witches. So I don't want to compare that to racism. But what has come to mind, I think you showed me at some point, the kind of cartoons that mid-century America was doing, representing people from Africa as these clowns, baboons, and at the same time, the kind of cartoons that Russia was making about African people with that dignity, with that beauty. And I think that is the difference between visibility and representation. So, in some cases, is actually visibility better than nothing? When, I don't know, Buffalo Bill, did it count as representation for anything other than making people think that trans people are serial killer and are just fetishists?
So the point on that is the emotions that you're trying to elicit, and you can elicit very strong emotions with essentially offensive imagery. It does a larger response than respectful, dignified.
Yeah, which is what we see here on YouTube as well.
That's why the hag is so cartoonish.
Yeah.
With the big nose and is ugly, because that's meant to evoke a stronger feeling.
Yeah.
And so it attaches the image you have. It embeds deeper.
Like, I personally carry issue with the video because the main thing that the witches do is having the fits, like when you're speaking on tongues. And so, first, that's actually a Christian evangelical thing, and I would argue that Christianity is quite literally the death of witchcraft, or has tried to be. And so that's not even a kind of visibility that is authentic or realistic, but every single character in there, in the end titled, is called a witch. These are the witches, these are the actors that played the witches. So if at the beginning I might have had the feeling that, oh, it gives you the feeling, but it doesn't actually claim. No, it does. It does. They're witches. And the main thing that these witches do is the throwing the fits, like when people speak in tongues, which is a Christian derivative thing that brings out other problems. And
what it's going for is that women need to be loud, women need to stand up, women need to shout.
Yeah, everybody scream.
But to what? What's telling you to scream against?
Yeah.
Because she's in a...
Oh my God, it's that level of, it's that level of emptiness of feminism.
Everyone is dressed up in witch talk outfits from Killstar. Like,
the sad issue of this video is the potential wasted. And, you know, I understand why, by now, if you are well-intentioned, you have an association between witch and feminism. Amazing. So, semiotically, if Autumn and Florence go for the figure of the witch, part of the value that they want to bring to the work that they are doing is this associated presence of feminism in progressive circles. You are a witch, you are a rebel, and therefore feminism. We discussed before about white feminism. I'll send you to those videos rather than go in detail here. But I'm okay. I'm not.
I mean, that's a point. You're having to modulate yourself.
Yeah.
You want to scream right now.
Yeah. The song itself is called Everybody Scream. It will be the title of our upcoming album. And all the signifiers speak of stand up, rebel, scream. At you what? What is the message that you get from the video? She's alone in the countryside. If I want to be generous, there's the figure of the cowboy, which could represent the pinnacle of masculinity / toxic masculinity. And, you know, she vomits flowers on him, and by the end she has her heel in his mouth, which is an implication possibly of killing. So let's be generous and say that with some effort, the message is scream against the patriarchy. It's a lot of generosity that I'm giving there, but I want to see that. I want to see that.
The witchcraft, the medicine, the spells and the injections, the harvest, the needle, protect me from evil. The magic and the misery, madness and the mystery, oh, what has it done to me? Everybody scream. That means nothing.
What the fuck does that mean?
You have to leave all this in.
Not even editing Isha note, but I read in detail the lyrics now, because listening just in the song, sometimes they don't stick with me. So, if you don't know, this is a song, and I'm losing liberal words of my understanding, because it's literally on a subject that is the entire reason why I worked in the music industry, and it's the altar allegory of being on a stage, and the god or goddess that are on the stage are not these supernatural beings. They are also addicted to what the supplicants, the audience, give them. And this is what the story of the song is about. I've read that Florence tried to consider quitting music before, and she keeps coming back. Might be the money, might also be because it must be an otherworldly experience, having 10,000, 20,000 people screaming your words, your name, as if there is indeed like a frenzy similar to what happens in Christian evangelical moments where they speak in tongues and they are possessed. I get that. I get that. It's the reason why I got into music. I get that. That makes it even more of an afterthought, the last verse where she talks about witchcraft. It absolutely means that. At best, we're talking about the magic of this exchange. But it's an afterthought. And I do respect the topic a lot, because it's one of the building blocks, in my opinion, of music and the existence of the exchange of music between the musician, the artist, and the audience. But this needed to be said. Florence has built an incredible, faithful, loyal fan base. All the people that I know that are really into Florence are very sensitive, beautiful people. Arguably, in a different way, but similarly to witchcraft. When an artist becomes a public figure and their art speaks to and is used as the voice of the people that finally find someone that puts into words what they feel, that is also a big responsibility. With great power does come great responsibility. It's the reason why I worked in music. I felt that responsibility when I was 12 and decided I'm gonna work in this because I feel the responsibility and I want to be a tiny wheel, part of the dreams factory, because I was still so positive about music, that betters the people that are reached by music. Because a lot of us are lonely, a lot of us lack people like us around. The power of music, the power of song is poetic. It can mean so many things, but usually we can also put meaning on it, so that usually when we get really attached to an artist, to a musician, is because the way that they are speaking, they are talking in poetry, in music, says something about what we feel but we didn't have the words for. That is a responsibility, whether artists take it upon themselves or not, whether they are aware of it or not. I completely understand everybody that is excited about visibility, mainstream. Florence has millions of followers. Florence has done a video with witches. Doesn't that legitimize us? And again, that gives us visibility. Does it give a representation? No. Nothing that the witches that we see in the videos do have anything actually to do with what, as modern witches, we do in our practice or what we stand for, except wearing very nice Disturbia, Killstar kind of clothes that are probably from TikTok. So it's the aesthetic. It's what I was saying before about the aesthetic. You scratch the surface, you take the visual signifiers, you reuse them, and you hope that for long enough it will still carry the connection to the value, to the original meaning. And what this video does is that using all those signifiers, even in the lyrics of the song, all those signifiers that should connect it to witchiness, they're for rebellion, but you don't get that. You need to imagine, you need to remember that witch means rebellion, because there's nothing about rebellion there. You need to imagine that because there's the scream, then that must stand against something. But against what?
Whatever you want it to. Compare this then with Delilah Bond's Witch.
I have the rage of a tiger for every girl you call a lie. All the women you took away, I feel the fire, I feel the hate. Indigenous sisters missing today, and you want me to smile, it's all okay. But I got the potion, emotion, sorority, fuck your misogyny and white supremacy. I got an army of people who follow me. I am the change you don't wanna see.
I'll leave a link down in the description below. That is the difference between visibility and representation. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. It's like tarot. The closer I look at this, the more angry I'm getting. And I don't want to. Florence has done so much good, has given so much hope. P.S. Recently, I had a discussion with someone on the channel that then I had to block, so unfortunately the comments are no longer there. But for a little bit, it was an interesting discussion. And the discussion was around witchcraft and the culture around modern witchcraft. And I had issue with Disney selling us back witchcraft in the form of the Agatha All Along tarot deck. I made a video about that. And this person, which was Italian, so I'm not surprised, I'm sorry, but some Italian people have a way to argue that it really triggers me, because it's the way that I've been made to shut up my entire life. So when I see that, I see red. I do not let it pass. You're not gonna fool me. And their argument, in short, was witchcraft is not an endangered society, an endangered culture, so there's no appropriation related to it. And to a degree, it's true. I've made a video about cultural appropriation. Like, yes, we can talk about that. We can talk about how technically Wicca appropriated from a lot of other cultures. But there is a point about selling, which is also one of the crucial points of cultural appropriation in general. It's about selling, and it's about putting yourself at the center of things in cultural appropriation. And I am not comparing witches today to any kind of endangered culture that actually had to survive suppression and genocide, like all the closed practice that there are, part of the occult, part of magic, part of witchcraft. But there still is an issue about everything, if you ask me. When you are not part of something, you don't know something, you ever research something, and you still have the audacity, the goal and the gumption to try and sell me something about it. You know nothing about it. You're not a witch. You don't care about being a witch. We saw the interviews with Jack Schaefer, who was the showrunner of Agatha All Along. She doesn't care about witchcraft. She sent her writers to do some research here and there. They paid someone for consultation that they didn't listen to. They rewrote the meaning of stuff, and they just sold us the TV series that we paid Disney Plus to watch. I hope not, but... And then they tried to package it in a tarot deck that they sold us. And I have issue with anybody that wants to sell me anything that they are not personally involved, that they have not even researched, not even got close enough to understand. And you want to make something to sell it back to me, who I live and breathe this. The fucking audacity. Now, I'm not saying that Florence is not a witch. Because honestly, she's done so much stuff at this point that either she's really into the aesthetic or there must be something behind it. But then if there is, why hasn't she been better representation? She could be. She could actually talk about it. The only thing that I found online about Florence being a witch is her at 15 founding a coven of witches in middle school. Great! But considering the amount of witch aesthetic that she's been using in her work in the last few years, if she is a witch, she could do so much better. She could take all those prejudices around witches away. More importantly, it could use her work to actually give a message to the people that look up to her, that are vulnerable, and because of their vulnerability and sensitivity look up to her, telling them what by now, she's almost a 40-year-old woman, by now she knows what the system is. Some of the system has favored her because she's white, she is thin, she is rich now. There is an argument that the only reason why she could talk about her issues like eating disorders is because they didn't affect the way that her personal aesthetic still reflected the aesthetic that the capitalist system demands out of a young white woman, which is thin. There is a premium that we put on that kind of aesthetic as well, especially when you are a woman, especially when you are a young white woman. Final Girl Studio made an amazing video that I will link down in the description below about the aesthetic of sickness and the nobility that we put on looking thin, almost sick. Huge trigger warning, because as someone who comes from eating disorders, it was very triggering for me. Know that. But that explains a lot of the premium that society has put on women looking a certain way. And despite the kind of eating disorder that Florence has talked about she had, which is the same that I had, as you can imagine, me talking about bulimia and Florence talking about bulimia, it's different. Would you like to venture a guess as to why? I've always said it before, privilege is not a dirty word. As long as when we have privilege, we use that privilege to elevate those who don't have it. Florence has chances for that. She's white, she's rich, she's thin. She talks to a kind of people that are precious. I have no other word for it. And she doesn't have to talk about important things. She might be as intimate as she wants, but she would still have a chance to talk about issues, to make people wake up sometimes to issues, and to make a point of a lot of the loneliness, a lot of the way that you feel misunderstood by the world, which seems to be a connective point with all the people that listen to her music. Yes, it's about how you feel, but do believe me, it's about how this system makes you feel. And that is a step that I haven't seen Florence do much. She has talked about her eating disorder. She has vaguely put here and there that that is a systemic issue. It's about the expectation that are put on a young white woman. But when you do a video that it's all about witches and witchy, and the lyrics are about that, and then you represent them like with the visual of Christian evangelicals, which that really bugs me personally, but you know, like we do a lot of journeying, we might do channeling. It doesn't look like that. That is the aesthetic that you're used to see when people get possessed in churches. But, you know, but bringing it back to why have I done this video? To shit on Florence? No. Florence does what she does. Visibility arguably is better than nothing. There have been examples where it actually shows that that's not the case, when the visibility that you give to something is just negative and make people have, therefore, a strong reaction. Think of the hag in Snow White. that kind of disgust. Was it better than nothing have a witch like that back in the 30s, because Snow White is from 37, 39. Was it better than nothing? We've grown from that. But I'm not sure that sometimes visibility is better than nothing. Is this as bad? No. No, it probably isn't. I can see that on some of these things I am anal. But it's genuinely because at this point I fear that if I don't talk about these things, nobody will, and we're just gonna take the crumbs that they give us and say, yes, thank you, please, more, without having any critical thinking applied to it. And so again, I'm not doing this to shit on the video, to tell you not to watch the video or not to endorse Florence. No, absolutely, I listen to Florence. But I'm making this video for you, so that next time that you see something that looks cool, looks witchy, you manage to keep that with you beyond the aftertaste. And if it actually has something, a message behind it, you can see it. And if it doesn't have that message, ask yourself why. Inquire, try and understand. And when it turns out that it's just surface level aesthetic, ask yourself, is that enough for you? Is that why you're doing this? And if it isn't, maybe we need to look further. And until the next video, I really hope that we can hex the patriarchy together, because there's need for it.